You have shared too much, and it is delaying everything that the divine has prepared for you. This is not a judgment. It is not a reprimand. It is a direct, urgent alert, coming from the deepest love that exists. If you have found this message today, on April 6th, 7th or 8th, know this was no accident. There is a specific message destined for you, and it must be delivered now before more time is lost. In the next few minutes, you will understand why certain blessings that should have already arrived are still waiting. You will discover the invisible mechanism that drains the strength from your miracles before they even manifest. And most importantly, you will learn what the divine is asking of you in this specific moment of your journey, so that everything which has been held back can finally overflow into your life. Stay until the end, because what you will hear here will change how you see spiritual protection forever. If you haven't yet, this is the moment to subscribe to this channel. Click the button now, turn on the notifications, because the content that arrives here is not random. It is directed. It finds those who need it. Let's begin. Think of a situation you've lived. You received incredible news. An opportunity arose. A dream began to take shape. And what was your first impulse? To tell, to share, to show the people around you what was happening. It's human, it's natural. The joy overflows and wants to be divided. But answer me honestly. How many times after telling did that thing simply wither? The opportunity vanished. The relationship cooled. The project stalled. The money that seemed on its way never came. And you were left wondering what happened. This has an explanation, and it is deeper than you imagine. There is a spiritual principle that the world's oldest traditions, from Jewish mysticism to Tibetan Buddhism, from various indigenous spiritual paths to the deepest Christian teachings, all recognize the power of sacred silence. The strength born when you guard attention. You need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. Guard, protect and cover what is holy, but before speaking of the solution, you must understand the problem in its full extent. Because what is happening to you goes far beyond simple bad luck or coincidence. You are a chosen one. This is not a pretty phrase to make you feel good. It is a spiritual reality with practical consequences. When someone is designated for an extraordinary ascent, to carry gifts that change atmospheres and destinies, to be an instrument of transformation in the lives of others, that designation comes with responsibilities most people were never taught to fulfill. One of those responsibilities is the administration of your spiritual energy. Think of it this way. You've heard of high voltage. In electrical transmission lines, the higher the voltage that needs to be transported, the more robust the protection around the cables must be. Not because the energy is dangerous in itself, but because a power that is too great, exposed without adequate protection, causes a short circuit. It disperses before reaching its destination. It loses potency along the way. Your spiritual life functions exactly like this. Every revelation you receive in prayer, every meaningful dream that visits your sleep, every internal promise the Spirit deposits in your heart, every insight that transforms your understanding. All of this carries a real, energetic charge, a living force in the process of materializing. When you expose that force before the right time, you are not just sharing information. You are releasing energy that should be concentrated, directed, building your miracle. It is like taking a laser beam and scattering it in all directions. It loses its ability to cut, to transform, to accomplish. And here comes the question that will change everything for you. What happens to that energy when it is exposed? There are 3 destinations for spiritual energy that is exposed prematurely, and all 3 are problematic in different ways. The first destination is dispersion. When you speak about what you are experiencing, about every detail of your spiritual journey, about every promise and every revelation, you literally disperse the concentrated force that was building something. The energy distributes itself among all the people who heard. It dilutes, loses cohesion. The miracle that was about to condense in your life dissolves before it materializes. This explains that familiar feeling that every time you share a plan before executing it, it stalls. Every time you talk about a relationship that is beginning, it cools. It is not superstition, it is spiritual physics. The second destination is interception. This will unsettle some, but it needs to be said. Not everyone around you vibrates at the same level. Not because they are necessarily bad people, but because every human carries their own fears, limitations, beliefs, and in some cases, unconscious desires for things to remain as they are. When you expose your spiritual revelations, your greater dreams, your evolution, you offer entry points for these energies. A word of doubt planted at the wrong moment, a glance laden with envy you don't even perceive, a negative prayer uttered by someone who fears your ascent. All of this creates real interference in the energetic field surrounding your manifestation process. Spiritual traditions have different names for this: the evil eye, envy, psychic vampirism, spiritual attack. The names vary, but the principle is the same. Exposure generates vulnerability. The third destination is internal fragmentation. This is perhaps the least spoken of, but it is the most insidious. When you constantly need to explain yourself, justify your journey, defend your revelations, or simply feel validated by what you are experiencing spiritually, you create an energetic dependence on others' opinions, and this dependence fragments your spiritual identity. You begin to doubt your own revelations when someone questions them. You begin to calibrate your faith according to others' reactions. You begin to need external permission to trust what the Spirit is speaking internally. This is one of the most effective ways to paralyze a chosen one. Now I need to ask you a direct question. Can you answer with honesty? In the last few months or the last year, have you shared details of your spiritual life with people who are not ready to receive it? Spoken about your prayers and divine promises with someone you knew deep down would not understand? Exposed intimate dreams and revelations on social media seeking validation? Talked about a transformation happening within you before it was solid enough to sustain itself? If the answer to any of these was yes, do not blame yourself. You did not know what you were doing. No one taught you that there is a spiritual pedagogy for what to reveal and what to guard. But now you know. And from this moment on, the rules of the game change for you. I want to tell you about a biblical scene most people know, but few interpret with the depth it deserves. Joseph was Jacob's favorite. He received prophetic dreams directly from God. He had extraordinary revelations about his destiny. And what did he do? He shared it all with his brothers. The result? He was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, unjustly imprisoned for years. Now, the issue is not whether God allowed all that to build Joseph's character. The issue is the premature exposure of the revelations created the energetic field that allowed for interference. The brothers, driven by the envy that the exposure fueled, became instruments of a detour that cost years of a chosen man's life. The miracle arrived. Joseph eventually reached the palace and saved nations. But how much time was lost? How many nights in prison? How much pain could have been avoided if he had guarded those dreams as sacred secrets? This is not theory. It is a pattern repeated in the lives of chosen ones throughout all of history. The good news is that, unlike Joseph, you are receiving this warning before paying the price for exposure. You are being warned now so you can change course before the detour is complete. Now let's speak about what the divine is saying specifically for you in this period of April 6th, 7th and 8th. These days mark a spiritual window of realignment, a moment of convergence where the divine is opening space for you to make choices that reposition your entire trajectory. And the central choice being presented to you is this: will you continue living in an exposed way, or will you embrace sacred discretion as a deliberate spiritual practice? This is not a small choice. It has implications in 3 dimensions of your life that are about to undergo a simultaneous transformation. And I want to speak to you about each one of them. The first dimension is your relationship with the divine. There is a vast difference between having a spiritual life and having a deep spiritual life. Most people have the first. Few develop the second. A spiritual life is characterized by external practices: prayer, meditation, attendance at services or rituals, reading sacred texts. All of this is valid and necessary. But a deep spiritual life is marked by an intimate, silent, and powerful communion with the divine. A connection that needs no audience, a conversation that happens in the secret place of the heart. Jesus said something that goes straight to the point about this. When you pray, go into your inner room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is in secret. Your Father who sees in secret will reward you openly. The secret of the room, the closed door, the prayer that has no spectators. Something happens in intimacy with the divine when you remove the audience. The voice becomes clearer, the revelations deepen. The communion shifts from superficial to transformative. But this requires that you stop using your spiritual life as content for others' consumption. Every time you post a prayer seeking likes, you are substituting real communion for spiritual performance. Every time you share every revelation you receive to gain approval, you are trading depth for validation. And God is inviting you urgently to return to the inner room, to close the door, to cultivate an intimate space no one else accesses, where the most powerful revelations of your life can be received, processed, and strengthened before any exposure. This will transform your spiritual life in a way no course, no conference, and no human mentor can achieve. Now let's turn to the second dimension, your circle of relationships. Have you ever truly stopped to consider who is around you? Not from a place of paranoia or mistrust, but with spiritual discernment. There's a phenomenon that happens to those in an ascension process that few speak about openly. As you grow, as your spiritual frequency elevates, as your consciousness expands, some people who were once a part of your life begin to no longer fit. Not because they are bad people, not because you are better than them, but because relationships are energetic fields, and fields with very different frequencies naturally repel one another. The problem is that many chosen ones remain stuck trying to maintain relationships that should have already reached their natural conclusion, spending energy explaining your evolution to those who lack the capacity or the interest to understand. Sharing spiritual revelations with people who, at best, become confused and at worst become resentful. Sacred discretion in this dimension means this discernment. Not everyone deserves access to what is happening inside of you. This is not arrogance. It is protection. A diamond being polished is not displayed before it is ready. A baby in the womb is not exposed to the storms before birth. A seed does not germinate when it is pulled from the soil every hour to check if it is growing. What is being born within you needs protection. And part of that protection comes from you discerning who has access to the process. But here is the part that will surprise you. When you begin to practice this discretion, something extraordinary happens. The space that was occupied by relationships that drained your energy begins to be filled by divine alliances. People who vibrate at the same frequency as you, who were appointed to walk beside you in this new phase, begin to appear in ways that seem impossible. This is the purification of your circle. It is one of the 3 miracles being prepared for you. And it cannot happen while you are still holding the wrong hands. Can you see this? Can you name 1 or 2 relationships in your life right now that are draining more than they are building, that consume more than they contribute? You are not alone in this perception. The 3rd dimension is your material prosperity and purpose alignment. I will be very direct here because there is so much confusion about this topic in spiritual circles. Prosperity is not a sin. Abundance is not a contradiction to spirituality. God has no interest in seeing his chosen children living in scarcity while their gifts remain dammed up for lack of resources. There is a direct connection between the spiritual maturity you are developing and the capacity to receive and steward material resources. Not because money is spiritual in itself, but because the same discipline that makes someone trustworthy in the spiritual makes them trustworthy in the material. He who is faithful with little will also be faithful with much. But what blocks the material flow for many chosen ones is exactly the lack of discretion about their plans, projects, and financial dreams. Think of someone you know, it could be you, who had a business project, an innovative idea, a life-changing plan, and who went out telling everyone about it before putting it into practice. And that project stalled, sometimes for lack of support, sometimes from the seed of doubt someone planted, sometimes simply because the energy was all spent in the talking and nothing was left for the doing. This happens with alarming frequency. Many entrepreneurial projects that fail do not die from a lack of capital or market, but from a lack of disciplined execution. And one of the greatest enemies of execution is the premature verbalization of plans. In the spiritual field, this has another name. It is the dispersion of creative force before manifestation. The resources being prepared for you, the opportunities aligning, the doors about to open. They need protected soil to materialize, soil that you prepare with the practice of discretion. When you stop sharing your plans before executing them, when you stop seeking external validation for every idea before acting, when you develop the discipline of keeping your projects in confidence until they are solid enough to withstand scrutiny, something shifts in your manifestation capacity. The force that was dispersed in conversations and posts returns to concentrate, and concentration is precisely what creates manifestation. I want to speak to you now about the armor of silence. In the most ancient spiritual traditions, there was an understanding that silence was not an absence of words. It was an active presence, a force, a deliberate choice that built something invisible around the practitioner. Buddhist monks practice vows of silence, not to deprive themselves of communication, but to accumulate an inner force that cannot be gathered while energy is constantly being released in words. The Christian mystics, from John of the Cross to Meister Eckhart, wrote extensively about the power of inner silence as the channel through which God speaks with greatest clarity. Indigenous and ancestral traditions hold the concept of the sacred secret as protection, where certain knowledges and practices are guarded not out of elitism, but because exposing them prematurely weakens and profanes them. What all these traditions recognize is that the word has real energetic weight, and every word spoken moves energy toward a purpose or toward no purpose at all. When you speak with intention, with discernment, with authority, you direct energy in a powerful way. Your speech has the power to create, to heal, to transform. But when you speak from compulsion, from anxiety, from a need for validation, from a habit of filling silence with sound, you waste the very same force that could be building your miracle. The armor of silence is built word by word that you choose not to speak, secret by secret that you decide to keep, revelation by revelation that you maintain in the sacred space between you and God. Every time you resist the impulse to explain yourself to someone who wouldn't understand anyway, you add a layer to this armor. Every time you keep a spiritual dream in silence while it is forming, you protect its gestation. Every time you hold a divine promise without needing the world to validate it, you demonstrate to the Spirit itself that you are ready to carry greater revelations. For what God reveals to you in secret is proportional to your capacity to keep secrets. Now I need to speak to you about something that may be uncomfortable, but it is necessary. There is a difference between sacred discretion and defensive isolation, and it is very important that you understand this difference so you do not fall into an extreme that is equally harmful. Sacred discretion does not mean you close yourself off from the world. It does not mean you stop relating, sharing, connecting. It does not mean you live in a bubble of anxious silence, distrusting everyone around you. That would be defensive isolation. And it comes from fear, not from wisdom. Sacred discretion comes from a completely different place. It comes from fullness, from inner security, from the awareness that you need no one's approval to confirm what God has already declared about your life. When you are full inside, you do not need to spill everything outward. The person who shares compulsively every detail of their spiritual life is usually doing so from an emptiness, needing the world to confirm what they are not yet sure is true. But when you develop a genuine communion with the divine, when you receive revelations that settle within you with a certainty that needs no external confirmation, you naturally begin to be more attention. You need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.